How many times I'm going to call my method? That is total 4 times. To illustrate how a function can have multiple parameters, I'm going to have this small snippet. While passing argument or parameter, I can able to specify the field name. Hello to all, a warm welcome to my new session on methods in C#. I'm Revati, faculty from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, first grade college, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So dear student, before going to start my today's session, let's recall the topic which I have covered in my last session of this chapter. So dear student, I started with C# methods. So dear student, if I consider C program, in C program, I'm going to have the concept called functions. So functions are nothing but the methods in C#. So what is method here? This method includes group of statement and it is used together to perform task. That means all the statements are used together to perform some task. Then I have discussed how to defining methods in C#. So dear student, at the beginning I'm going to have format specifier. Along with that, I'm going to have return type. Along with that, I want to specify the method name. And I'm going to have the parameter list. And I'm going to write all the parameters inside the brace. Then I'm going to group all the statements within the curly brace. That's nothing but I'm going to write all these statements within the curly brace. This is the way I can able to define a method in C#. Along with that, I have discussed nested methods. So what is nested method? Methods inside another method. There are two ways I can able to have nested methods in C#. One is I'm going to have the main function or main method. Within that I can able to define my own method. Another way I'm going to define my own method. Inside that method, I'm going to write another method that is known as nesting of methods. These are the certain topic I have discussed in my last session. But in my today's session, I'm going to deal with C# method parameters. Along with that, I'm going to deal with default parameter value. Along with that, I'm going to deal with multiple parameters, return values as well as named arguments. These are the 5 topics I'm going to deal in my today's session. And from the examination point of view, all the points or all the topics are very, very important. Now, let's start with our today's topic, that is C# method parameter. Anyway, dear student, we came to know that what is method. So what is method here? There is nothing but a group of statement together performs some task. Now, method can have parameters or may not be. So dear student, the informations can be passed to methods as parameter. That means in my program, if I want to pass the information to the methods, then how I'm going to pass the information? That is in terms of parameters. So what is parameter here? parameters are nothing but the arguments. So parameters act as variable. So what is parameter? It's nothing but the arguments or variables inside the method. They are specified after the method name. That means I'm going to specify the parameters after the method name. And where I'm going to specify inside the parenthesis. And you can also able to add n number of parameters. That means a function can able to have one parameter, two parameter, five parameter, or n number of parameter. And where I'm going to write the parameters inside the parenthesis. So dear student, this is the way I can able to write the parameters in my function. Now I'm going to have the example here. So dear student, this is nothing but my function or method definition. Okay, and I'm going to call the method in my main function or main method. So this is nothing but the function declaration. So function declaration in the sense what? Function prototype along with function body. That is nothing but method prototype along with method body. And where I'm going to call the method, that is in my main program. And here, what is my method name? That is nothing but my method. See here. So dear student, while calling or while writing method, I have to follow some rule. That means the calling method and called method must be same in terms of names as well as parameters as well as return type. And what is the name of the function here? My method. Here I'm going to call the method and I'm going to pass one argument or one parameters because I'm going to have only one parameter. And if I call this method, this Asha is assigned to F name. And when I call this statement, I'm going to get the answer or output as Asha. Now, second time I'm going to call the method. Now I'm going to pass Geeta. When I print the output, I'm going to get the output Geeta. And in the third time, I'm going to pass Manju. So what is the output I'm going to get? Manju. So how many times I'm going to call the method? 3 times, and each time I'm going to pass different parameters. Now I'm going to have default parameter value. So dear student, I can able to define my own default parameters value. Now dear student, here I have method called my method. Now inside the main method, I'm going to call my method. And how many times I'm going to call my method? That is total 4 times. And when I call at the first time, I'm going to pass the value. So what value I'm going to pass? That is Sweden. Okay, and it is passed to my method. But here I have assigned some default value. So what I'm going to do, this country can able to hold Sweden and it's going to display Sweden. Now see here, second time I'm going to pass India and I'm going to display India. But while calling third time, I'm not going to pass any value or any parameter. In that time, this method is capable to access Norway. Okay, so what is the output I'm going to get when I call this my method without parameter? Then I'm going to get the output Norway. Now, in the fourth time, I'm going to call my method and I'm going to pass USA. And what output I'm going to get? That is USA. And this program is going to call my method 4 times and I'm going to get the output Sweden, India, Norway as well as USA. Now I'm going to have my third type of parameter, that is multiple parameter. That means a function can able to have multiple parameters. To illustrate how a function can have multiple parameters, I'm going to have this small snippet. Now, dear student, what is my function name here? That is my method. And this function is capable to access or hold two variable, and one is of type string and another one is of type integer. Now, dear student, I'm going to call this method in my main program. While calling, I'm going to pass the value. And how many argument or how many parameters I'm going to pass? That is 2 parameters. And how many times I'm going to run this method? 3 times, because in my main program I'm going to call this method 3 times. For that reason, I'm going to run this method 3 times. So this is the way in C#, a method can able to have multiple parameters. So what is multiple here? That is nothing but more than 2. That means I can able to have more than 2 parameters in my method. Now I'm going to have return a value. So what is the meaning of return a value? So dear student, while defining method, I'm going to have this section called return type. So dear student, please make a note here that function can able to return a value or may not be. Suppose if the function returns value, then I have to specify the return type, either integer, float, double, character, string, etc. Suppose if the function does not return any value, in that time I want to specify the return type void. So dear student, I'm going to have the method called my method, and it is going to have only one parameters and it is going to return some value. And what kind of value? It is integer. Now, where I'm going to call this method? In my main function or in my main method. And how I'm going to call this method? See, console.writeLine, and I'm going to pass the argument as my function name, and I'm going to pass the parameter 3. Now, this function or this method can able to access the parameter 3 and it is responsible for performing addition operation. So, 5 plus x. 5 plus x, it is 5 plus 3. It's nothing but 8 and it is going to return 8. So, this method is going to return 8. And that is printed by the console.writeLine. So this is the way I can able to have return values in my function or method. And at the end, I'm going to have the named argument. So what is named argument? So dear student, while passing argument or parameter, I can able to specify the field name. So dear student, method arguments. That is nothing but named arguments. See here, I'm going to specify the variable name or parameter name and I'm going to assign the value. See here, for child 1, this value, for child 2, this one. So dear student, what is named argument? In the argument, I can able to specify the parameter name and it is called named arguments. Now dear student, it is also possible to send arguments with the key value syntax. That means I'm going to send the variable name with the value and it is known as named arguments. See here, I'm going to have the function called my method. So here function is nothing but method and it's called my method. And this method is capable to access 3 parameters. One is of type string, next one is also of type string and the last one is also of the type string. Now, I'm going to print only the youngest child, that is nothing but child 3. Now, I'm going to call this method inside the main method. See here, while calling along with parameters, I'm going to specify the field name, that is nothing but variable name. So, child 3, John, child 1, Lime and child 2 once again, Lime. Now, what I want to display? I want to display only the third child information, that is John. So, dear student, when I call this method, all the arguments are assigned to all the arguments which is present in the method declaration. See here, how many parameters I'm going to have? 3. But what I'm going to do? I'm going to display only 1 parameter. So, what is named argument? As the name itself indicates that while passing argument, I can able to specify the name of the argument. This is the way we can able to use named arguments in our program. So, dear student, in my today's session, I started with how to use parameters, how to use multiple parameters, how to use default parameters and how to return a value and how to use named arguments in our method. But in my next session, I'm going to deal with the output parameters. Along with that, I'm going to deal with variable arguments list, method overloading, C# method overloading. There are 2 types of C# method overloading, that is by changing number of arguments as well as by changing data type of arguments. So these are the certain topic I'm going to deal in my next session. Anyway, dear student, let's meet in the next session with more information about methods. Until that, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you.